I am so excited for today's podcast episode. I have Heather Allison, just such a beautiful soul. We met in a beautiful business mastermind and just was like talking about podcasts. And I was like, hey, you want to talk more? Come on my podcast. So welcome, Heather. I'm so grateful to have you here today.
Thanks, beautiful. I know that was so fun. I just feel like we fell in love in a mastermind together.
I was just like, I love Heather. She's so sweet. So good. And like every question you asked, I was like, oh, that's such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would first love it if the audience could get to know you a little bit better. And if you would share a bit about your journey and what's brought you to this point where you are in accessing your gifts, the way you support humans in the world, and the gifts that you're here to, give to the world.
It is such a story. I always try to how do I shorten this story?
Take your time.
Nutshell. There is no such thing. And if you're hearing jingles, I have a lot of rings on. So in case your audience is wondering. So yeah, I'm Heather Allison. I lived my life like anybody for the first 39 years of my life. I worked in corporate America, had marketing, kind of branding jobs, marketing jobs, creative support team at blah, blah, blah. Like I did all the things, and I was really trying to kind of find what my work was going to be in this lifetime. Like I always just kind of had jobs and I liked them when I was good at them or what have you, but nothing really lit me up. Nothing really felt like it was. I actually started believing that I didn't have a kind of a career purpose, like a work purpose in this lifetime. I was like, well, that's fine. Maybe my purpose is something different. And, seeing other people climb the corporate ladders, and I was like, and they're excited about it. And I was like, I just don't want that. I really don't have any interest in any of that. And then a few things kind of transpired. I was married and then divorced, and I spent 12 years of my life with this person, and it was the most damaging relationship I've ever had. And finally extricated myself from that and had a couple other relationships, that were beautiful or that kind of never clicked or what have you. And I just was like, why can I swear on here? Because I swear kind of funny. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Why can't I figure this out? I feel like I'm designed for love. Why can't I figure this out? And I found, when you're kind of desperate Googling in the middle of the night, I found some work that this woman did that was very, very, it just felt mythic. It felt like something about it vibrated something for me. And it was very much this kind of feminine, masculine polarity based relationship stuff. And I was like, oh, what is this? And so I started playing with it and toying around with it, and felt so much shift in my life and in myself and in my relationships and dating and everything that I was like, I need all of this. And so I signed up for her coach training. And so I actually was, and I didn't know coaching was an industry. I really didn't even know it was a thing. And so I was just like, but I just want all of this information. So give it to me, please. And so I was waiting for that to start. And turns out I ended up getting laid off the day before coach training started, the day before. And I was like, oh, okay, universe, I see what you're doing here. And I was just like, all right, I guess this is what we're going to do. And so I did it. And I went through training and I started like a relationship coaching business. And within about 8 months though, I was like, there's something, it's bigger than just love relationships. There's more to it than this. And then like 2 months after that, I ended up having the beginning of what would be a massive spiritual awakening. And I really credit that for tapping into the feminine in the first place, because she, in my opinion, and in my experience, is kind of our channel opener. She is our opener, period. So at this massive spiritual awakening in which this man I call my cosmic teacher started talking to me from the other side. And he started teaching me things about the energetics of the archetypes and how they work together, and the universal archetypes and how they work together, and what we're actually doing here, and all of the things. And he's still teaching me, and along with other guides of mine. But and very quickly, this work became something else. It became something different. So see, there's no nutshelling this. So now I guide a mystery school for women, an annual mystery school for women, where we really dive into what I call the deep, ancient, cosmic feminine. So it's it's both, the divine feminine work that we tend to kind of know and see out there in the industry that a lot of people teach, which is like, like body and breath and sensuality and ceremony and flow and all of that beautiful, beautiful work. It's also polarity work that we see out there, which is the dance and the harmonics of the feminine and masculine together. But it goes much deeper than that. It goes into, it goes deeper, it goes higher, it goes more cosmic, it goes more source-based, if you will, which is we play with what I have received is an archetypal trinity. Or the archetypal trinity, which is the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and then the creator archetype, or the 0 point archetype, or the primordial feminine, whatever you want to call her. And it's the trinity of those energetics that we shift us into. We kind of heal out of all of our wounded energetics and wounded archetypal patterning, and shift us into this really our original energetic blueprint, so that everything that we do becomes an act of creation, an act of sacred creation, an act of expansion, an act of love, instead of being stuck in where we typically are, which is operating from wound and operating from forgetting and operating from ego. And so we shift out of all of that into our sacred energetics.
That. That's so beautiful. And
thanks.
Can you share like some of the most common wounding you see? Like, is there like a top 3 or 4 to just, help the audience maybe identify some of what they may be experiencing?
Yeah. Cause it's so esoteric, right? Like what? Yeah. So I think the easiest way to describe some of this is, so the women who join this work are a number of things. They either are entrepreneurs, and they've been conditioned and taught to do business in this kind of wounded masculine patriarchal paradigm kind of way, right, where selling and marketing is very, fear-based, scarcity-based, based on get, and like, how can I get that client? How can I get you to sign up with me? How can I get your money kind of thing?
That sounds like my past coaching relationships, right? To interrupt, but no, yucky.
It's gross. I know. So yes. And it's, so founded on burnout and hustle and the hamster wheel and all of that stuff. And it's like, they know that my entrepreneurs typically are the ones who, and the sun just came out here, typically are the ones who are like, they know that they have a beautiful purpose. They know that they have a soul mission that they're here to bring through the world. And they know that can't happen through the old ways, the wounded ways. And so not only is it like, I know that this work has to come through me, and I know it can't happen in that outdated bullshit kind of way that keeps us stuck. And by the way, when we sell and market from the wound, we're going to create more wound in our clients too. So anyway, or they're like dying inside because this is not them and it doesn't feel aligned for them. And it's sapping them of their life force and all of that. So that's one kind of group of women. Women in corporate realms come here too. And it's a different form of purpose. Theirs for me is kind of the disruptor in the old paradigm of business as it is in the like behemoth of corporate America or corporate wherever, corporate world. Or they come in because they're like me, like their love lives weren't working or aren't working. And either they can't figure out how, like they know they're meant for love. And it's like, why isn't it showing up? Why isn't it happening? I can't figure it out. I'm like doing all the things. I thought I was doing all the things that you're supposed to do. And why isn't it happening? Or their relationships are falling apart and they don't know why. Like it felt really good for a while. And then it's like the distance starts setting in, or things start just crumbling. And they again, kind of can't figure out why. That's the common thread typically, is like, I thought I was doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, no matter what kind of avenue it is. And it's like, I've read all the books, I've taken all the courses. Why is it still not working for me? I can't figure it out. Or they come in because they know that there's something bigger they're here for, and know that there's something bigger they are supposed to have access to, like my mystics or my mystics in the making, if you will. And so they'll come in for kind of their channel opening and access to the invisible realms, if you will. And then there are the women who come just because they're like, I don't know sometimes what you're even talking about, but I feel something. Something is vibrating in my body and I don't understand it, but I need more of it. And I actually really love those, because that they're just by the fact that they're stepping into this work, they're actually starting to trust the mystery in and of itself by going, I don't know, I can't explain it, but I gotta go. So it's one of my favorites. But I say that the wounds are typically just that they're kind of that they can identify for themselves is the conditioning that we've been handed in this world that says, you know, it's all about productivity. It's all about the measurements in our lives. Like, you know, how far are you in what you're doing, or how much do you have, right? How much money do you have? How much money do you make? Or how far along are you in your quote unquote timeline? Or like, why aren't you here yet? Or what's wrong with you that you're not here yet, that you think you're supposed to be here yet? And all the places that we really are operating in our lives and in our relationships in a way that creates more dissonance with what we're actually meant for, rather than gets us closer to what we're actually meant for.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And the conditioning is so intensive, like everything you just mentioned, and then throw on top of that being conditioned that we're unworthy and that our bodies aren't good enough and we need to look like the Photoshop fake images in the magazines and on TV and all the like illusory, you know, everything that we're sold is just like women have so much pressure, and then wonder why so many end up with adrenal fatigue and hormone imbalances and emotional eating and self-sabotaging behaviors. And they're burnt out because, like you said, they're chasing the old paradigm because of the conditioning, when there's a whole new realm to step into, where you don't have to sacrifice your health and well-being, your mental health, none of it, to step into this. But I feel like it's just so significant right now with the level of crisis going on, of suffering because of that.
Yeah. This whole paradigm is built on, this wounded paradigm is built on production and like the machine, if you will, and like measurement. And so it's basically everything that we've been conditioned into in this wounded paradigm that's basically, like I said, sapping us of our life force and our soul purpose and our everything is because it's basically training us to be these linear product-based kind of robots that we just kind of like push and do and go and only do the things that make sense, and only do the things that, like, when you have to have a plan, and it has to fit on a spreadsheet, and it has to be da da da. And like I was telling my clients yesterday, I'm like, I've never had a business plan in my life.
Me either.
I don't even know what they do.
It just sounds boring to me.
It totally does. How is that soul guided? How things move in the mystery, things move in the feminine. And when you're not kind of able to dance and be with and feel those more subtle realms and the information that's coming of the subtle realms, whether that's inside our bodies or in our intuition or in our emotions, it's like you're just becoming more and more machine. And it's no wonder why we feel like there's something missing. It's no wonder why we feel like we're stuck and it's not working, or like this doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel like me. It's because it's not. That's not human. That's not who you're supposed to be.
I couldn't agree more. I think that this is why, though, I think we end up on these journeys to lead us home, to remember who we really are, and that we're these sacred human beings and these souls that are just so full of light and so special. And when we detach from that machine and, you know, step back into our power, it just absolutely changes every area of our lives, not just in business or love, but just everything. It's so significant. I have so many questions because you said so many amazing things. So my first question that I'm curious to hear your take on is, okay, so our soul incarnates into our body. Why do we forget, right? Because I know before we come in, we're like, we know how amazing we are, and it's not an ego thing, but it's like pure light, right? And then we come into this body and it's like we get amnesia and then we forget, and then we're conditioned, we're these little ants that are minuscule on this planet, even though we're not.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I love these questions. I also just wanted to say too, because I love what you do and the weaving that you do with like body and like spirit kind of based work, because a lot of times that's when we finally start listening, is when we have a complete shutdown and our body is like, listen, I've been trying all the other ways to get you to pay attention and you're not listening. So here you go. So I love that so much.
Sorry. Thank you. That's okay.
Okay. But I love this question. These are like some of my favorite kinds of questions. I just go straight into the mystery. So for me, it's on purpose. The forgetting is on purpose, because if you think about it, some of the times my cosmic team delivers stuff in such direct kind of like sassy ways. So the way that I just heard this was like, what do you think the point would be of being there if you still remember? Like, why would you be? What would the point be? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, of course we forget, because everything, at least right now in the way that like in in where we are as a human species in our development, I feel our forgetting serves a purpose because it is in our remembrance that we heal. And we don't just heal for ourselves, we heal for the collective, and forwards and backwards through time and dimension, in my opinion. And so if you think about it, the stuff that we do easily, just as humans, just in like day-to-day life, the stuff that comes easily for us, it doesn't have much charge. It doesn't have much energy behind it, really. It's the stuff that I got this once as alchemy doesn't happen when you're already at the top of the mountain. It happens when you're at the bottom and decide to start climbing. Do you know what I mean? Like that's when the change happens. And so our forgetting in at least in part is on purpose, so that the things that we choose, every single time we choose love again, every single time we choose source again, every single time we choose our power and and who we really are, and like the divinity that we are, we're healing something, and we're doing it with this like starburst blast of power. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. I love that. That's just so beautiful. And so one thing I'm like, that ties into this question, I guess the next layer of it is, I mean, do we get to a certain level of density? Like we're on a third density planet that's shifting to 40, 50, et cetera. But when we get to a certain level of density on a planet, do we remember, do you think, or is it that whenever we incarnate into our next lifetime, it's obviously because there's lessons to learn, there's healing to be done, or is it like on a polarity based planet?
So I have never super been one to talk about like, let's get to the 5D, like not to make fun of it. I'm not disparaging any of that. I believe in it. My belief system, my worldview is more that it's all here right now.
Yes, totally.
It's all here right now. It's not so linear that it's like, it's such a good metaphor, the video game, but it's not that linear. It's not that we're on level 3 right now and we're trying to get to level 4 and then we get to level 5. For me, level 3, like third dimension is like, it's just more physical here.
Right.
It's just much more physical here. Fourth and fifth dimension is more conscious. It's more higher consciousness. And fourth dimension is who we be in between those to connect the two, if that makes sense. It's like, it's the bridge, if that makes sense. But I don't really deal in that realm for that much, because for me, all the realms are here. All of the dimensions are here, and we have access to all of it here. For me, and you can take this or toss this, anybody who's listening, who, if it doesn't resonate, please don't take it. But for me, it's just levels of separation. It's just, it's kind of like the forgetting is on purpose. So is the physicality, so is the density, so is ego. They're all on purpose because it's a form of experience here. There's this, we just aren't unembodied source in this place. And so it's not that it's wrong here and we're not broken here. It's just that we, and I don't know, maybe it goes forever. Maybe there's always all the dimensions all the time forever because it's constant creation. And maybe that's just the case, and who knows. But where we are right now as humans and in this particular timeline and dimension and all of that, I just feel like our work, and I think it's true for any, I think it's true for any dimension. It doesn't matter. Our work is always to remember that we are source.
I love that.
Full stop.
Agree.
And that's just it.
That's
the nutshell, if there were one.
I love that. And I love the explanation of like no separation, because I think there can be ego brought into like, well, this person's on the 5D, or like I'm on the 5D and this person's 3D. And we don't need division and separation. We want unity. Right. And so I love that. And I think that we can access it now. We create our reality in the moment, right? So we get to create this beautiful experience. We can choose that. And we can also choose whatever we focus our energy and our thoughts on, right? So
I also think that that's the whole point of the mystery, is that it's a paradox. And so, yes, of course, we're always, in the process of remembrance, and we're always like already whole, and so it's, maybe this just is how Creator created, and it's the ride, it's the roller coaster, and we just are in a certain loop of it, you know? So who knows?
It's quite the ride right now. Let's
Certainly
just say
is.
I'm like,
This is the
okay.
upside down part when you feel like, am I going to fall out?
Right.
Am I going to die?
I know some days when I'm like, why did I volunteer to be here right now? And then I'm like, well, it must be good.
Right.
I don't know if I would have volunteered if it wasn't. But you got to like remind yourself of that. I have to anyway, sometimes when I like, take my focus off my little and look outwardly, I'm like, oh goodness.
Yeah.
But
I think we're all, those of us who are here are all the badasses, because it's like I always like to say we're like the extreme sportists in the soul world. It's like they're sitting up there going, whoa, you're going back again? What? You're going down there?
Yeah, we're like, I guess so. You coming along?
Here we go. Yeah.
And what's so hilarious is in our soul contract, you and I've been like, yeah, we're going to be this mastermind and then we're going to record a podcast. We're going to talk all about this stuff.
Totally. That's so funny.
It's you got to add the humor into it. Yeah. Something you just mentioned were timelines. And I would love it if you shared a bit more about what a timeline is. And like, I know we can jump timelines individually and as a collective. So just would love to hear like kind of your
Yeah. And I think there's one of the things I wanted to just say too, is like, I feel like the danger in all of this stuff is when we try to get too linear about it and give it like one definition, because this is the thing that it means. This is one of the lessons that my team has given me, where they actually showed me a vision, and then they delivered the meaning of it, the message behind it. And I was like, I was in tears. It was so beautiful and so powerful. I was like, oh my God, this is everything. And literally the next day they showed it to me again, and they delivered a different message that was completely different, totally like paradox of the one before. And it was, again, brought me to my knees, brought me to tears. And I was like, what? And it literally was because they were like, yeah, there's no one meaning. There's no one way that this works. There's no one definition for this. And I think that that's one of the things that we get so caught up in, and we've been so conditioned to finding like, what is the one meaning? What is this linear way that this works? And so that I can kind of grab onto it and not let go of it. But as soon as we try to do that, the creative universe, paradox, the mystery, creation itself shifts on us. And it asks us to look at something else. It asks us to see another way. It asks us to see from a different perspective. So timelines. For me, the simplest way for me to kind of relate to that idea is that it's simply the unfolding of our particular soul path. But what makes it really complicated is that we all have them, and they're all interweaving. And there's also a collective path, and there's all these things. I actually like to look at it like the spiral. I actually have a mini mystery school called the Spiral that's starting next year for like those who aren't quite ready for Golden Goddess and like the depth of her. There's kind of a smaller experience, but the spiral for me is like, it's constantly expanding and opening ever farther into constant creation, into infinity in one end, and it's always kind of collapsing and constricting and tightening, narrowing down into infinite collapse, if you will, in the other end. And there's not just one spiral. There are many. I believe that it's like there are multiple spirals that we walk in our soul paths, where this thing over here with my career might be kind of on one spiral, and in my relationship, it might be a bigger one, a slower one. And do you know what I mean? And there's one in the collective as well, like many in the collective as well. So it's so complex. And I think that when we try to understand timelines, spirals, time itself, anything with these nutshell kind of definitions or single definitions, it takes the power out of them. It takes the mystery out of them. And for me, the point of that is when we can relate to them as these kind of ever defining and redefining themselves and ever moving things, that's when we're actually playing with the mystery. And that's when we're playing in the quantum realms, when we can really get to a place where we're not so attached to having one meaning and one definition for something and one understanding of something, and can be in constant creation with it. That's when we're actually aligning with the quantum realms and the mystery and the creative universe, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does. And I love that. And again, it's just what I keep getting is like detaching, right?
Yeah.
And allowing like the unfolding. Because I can feel what it feels like when I shift timelines, right? It's just like you feel it in the body. There's an energetic and emotional shift, but there's all kinds of them, right? You're right. It's not just one linear thing, right? It's just like the body. It's like, you can't just eat a salad, but keep your schedule overbooked and expect your hormones are going to balance, right? Like it's, there's so much more to it. But again, you're so right. We've been so conditioned with this linear thinking, and there's one way and it's this one thing. And it definitely, I feel like, can keep us stuck on the hamster wheel. Same with timelines, right? Like stressing that we're on the wrong timeline, or trying to pressure ourselves. We need to get to a higher timeline. And the allowance and the detachment, I think, are just such important parts of all of these pieces.
I love that. And bringing it back to the body too. It's like, there's so many systems. If you just focused on one and what that one system needs, or what have you, or trying to kind of like heal the one system, it's like, you're kind of forgetting a lot of the others. And like, it's just such an interworking and interrelated system of systems. And that's kind of how it feels for me in like the universe, like the cosmos, if you will. It's just, we so desperately want to define everything and have meanings for everything. And it's so much simpler than that as well. It's just, can you, kind of coming back to timelines and soul paths and all the things, like, can you just let yourself be guided? And can you let yourself get really comfortable with the unknown? And can you let yourself not have to know so much before you go? Can you let yourself be led by what wants to come through you, and how it feels, and by love itself, capital L love? And like, can you stop worrying so much about if it makes sense and how it fits with everything else? And do you know what I mean? And can you let it be a much more organic path? And for me, that's when we have those quote unquote timeline shifts, or jump timelines, or quantum leaps, or what have you, is because we're letting go and we're allowing ourselves to be in flow with how the creative universe actually works. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like there's I'm not giving you any short answers today.
No, this is great. I love the thoroughness, and I agree. And it is a flow. Like the universe isn't like, oh, okay, we need to like go around it just like a stream. It's not like, oh, this stick, I've got to like lift up the whole water and move it to the, like, it's just, it's a divine flow. Yeah. But
I think that maybe just try to simplify it, because I'm like, people might be like, what the hell is she talking about? But it's like, instead of thinking about or worrying about timelines, because then, like you said, a lot of times we can kind of come into this like pressure to be somewhere else, or shame that we're not somewhere else, or wondering if we're doing it right, wondering if we're in the wrong place, or what have you. I like to look at it as weaving, and just understand that your soul, whether you feel like you have a direct connection, like a conversational dialogue with her or not, if you can hear her or not, if you know how to listen to her or not, she is going to be guiding you to things, she or he is going to be guiding you to things that aren't in a linear order. So the way that I like to describe this is like, I'm literally probably reading 1,000 books, and I'm not even exaggerating right now, but it's because I no longer approach reading books from this kind of completionist perspective, where I was like, but I started it, I finish it to go to the end. I literally let my soul and my cosmic team guide me to what they want me to read. Sometimes it's a page over here, and then it's a chapter over here, and then it's a page or a couple pages in another book over here. Sometimes it's a literal paragraph in one over here. And while that might seem like annoying, because it's not like, wow, I would like to finish a book, it's so magical. It's so magical because it inevitably, every single time when they guide me to something, it's exactly what I needed in the moment that I needed it. It speaks to exactly the questions that have been going through my mind that day or that week or what have you. Or it's just so miraculous that it's like, I'm always like, how do you guys do that? I don't understand. How do you do that? How do you know? But that's just my linear mind. That's my rational, linear, ordered mind that wants things to kind of make sense. But that's when we can let go of that. So I guess my invitation is to let go of the idea that we need to even think about timelines, because they happen.
Right.
whether we think about them or are conscious of them or not. And the most powerful way to quote unquote collapse them or jump them or quantum leap or whatever is to just be guided.
Yeah. Yeah. Surrender, let go, let go of control. I love that. And so you've been talking a little bit about your guides and like guidance and receiving guidance. And we all have a team, right? Like that's something we all have. But how do we start to access it? Because I think that's a question that a lot of people have is like, okay, well, if I have this team, like, how do I know they're there? How do I access my team? How do I start working with them? Because I think it's such a gift to have that access and grow that connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So my first invitation is always start with your soul. Specifically like direct connection to her or him. I always say her because all of my clients are women, but direct connection to her where you're literally speaking to her as if she is, your primary guide, because she for me is the one who has the map to your highest destiny, to your highest path, where, spirit guides, animal guides, whatever, on the other side, archangels, doesn't matter, whoever you work with, angels, they are support team in essence, and they can help, and they are here to bring information and messages and all of that. But for me, our souls, in my opinion, should always have the final say, because again, she's the only one who knows exactly what's for us. And so that's the first piece I would say, like, start with her, start cultivating that dialogue with her. I have a meditation that I sell, I think for like $11 or something like that, that actually takes you through that, a practice to meet her and to get to know her and to establish a language with her. I also, a really dear friend of mine I actually grew up with, I think that there's something interesting in the water where I grew up. And that Elisa Romeo, she is kind of a midwife for your soul. She wrote a book called Meet Your Soul, which is fantastic. I highly recommend. She also has meditations on her site. She's the one who helped me tap into this first. So she was like one of my very early mentors as well. The practice I guide is inspired by hers, but is my own flavor. But I highly recommend either of those, and cultivate that first. Because then what's beautiful about that is that then you can ask her questions like, I keep seeing this thing, or I had this dream, or is this somebody you want me to talk to? Or is this something that you want me to receive a message in, or what have you? And you can really start kind of building and growing your team, your awareness of your team, your relationships with your team from that. The other is that I would say, like, be paying attention to your dreams, be paying attention to the things that you see kind of repeating over and over again around you in your life. And just things that keep showing up, things that keep kind of like following you around, if you will, and just be curious about them. I'm a big fan of something I call intuitive Googling. So if things are kind of following you around, or you're having like, why is that animal always showing up for me? Or why do I keep seeing this number? Or why does the name, like Metatron keep showing up in my life? What is that? Just be curious about it and plug some stuff into Google to do some searches. But the important part of intuitive Googling is that you let yourself be guided to what wants to be found. Meaning you're not writing a term paper where you're like being like all of the information and it's all, you know what I mean? You're like, poke into this link and see how it feels in your body. See if it like goes, oh, like kind of surprises you and it feels really fun or good or like supportive of you. And if it doesn't, go to the next one, like do you know what I mean? We're not being, again, completionist about it. Right. Just let yourself be curious and then let the sensations in your body, and especially those like, ooh, kind of moments, guide you into what wants to come, what wants to be shown to you, and just keep going that way.
I love that. And yeah, we'll have to get the link for your meditation so people can buy it and listen to it, because it's absolutely beautiful. I love that. I love that so much. I love intuitive Googling. I haven't heard that before, but it's so great. Oh, so good. Okay. So yes, I think that's such a beautiful way to start accessing and like you said, our soul, because our soul has our greatest good in mind. So you mentioned about the channel, right? Having access to our channel. So what exactly is that for maybe people who are not sure? And how can we start accessing our channel? Is it different than the access to the soul?
I kind of use that term as our readiness and availability and willingness and capacity to receive in and from. No, that doesn't make sense. Like, what are the words? And I'm like, but from our soul, from our cosmic team, from universal consciousness, from anything and everything. But it's the throughway, if that makes sense. It's just the throughway for us to receive guidance and information and consciousness and all of that. So for me, I kind of use it as a term, kind of a blanket term for just simply our ability to, and again, our willingness and availability and capacity for receiving from the invisible realms. But that also includes, when I talk about the invisible realms, I'm also talking about the ones inside of us. So like our emotion body and our energy body and our the sensations that we feel and all of that. So all of that I consider to be our channel.
Yeah. And how do we strengthen our access, whether it's the energetic, the emotional, right, from source? Because I feel like there's so many probably amazing ways to do that.
There is, but there's a really, really simple one. This might be my shortest answer so far, is to start listening and start taking sacred masculine action for what you hear. And it doesn't matter what that is, but it's become an active participant in the conversation. Actually be in dialogue with it. When we're just like, it's like, imagine if somebody was talking to you and trying to tell you something over and over again. And you're like, even if you're hearing it and you're just kind of like, cool. I'm not doing anything, not responding, not showing that you're listening, not kind of, being an active participant in it, they're going to maybe stop talking to you as much or whatever. And that's not out of punishment or anything like that. It's just kind of the nature of the circuit of energy, right? So like, okay, so the example I always like to give is, because I do a lot of dream work, and this is such an arbitrary example of this, but I had a dream once where part of his dream was that I ate 3 chewable vitamin C tablets.
Oh.
And I woke up and I was like, okay, sure, I'll go eat 3 vitamin C tablets, and I'm in the habit of always asking my soul, I was like, do you want me to do that? And seeing what she says, but I got a yes. And so I did it. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't have any idea why, but I did it. And you know what I mean? And we don't have to know why. We don't have to have a logical explanation for it. We don't have to have the understanding of it sometimes, but it's like, be in the dialogue to see if this is something that wants you to interact with it, something that wants you to engage with it. Same thing with like, if I see, a guide appear to me in my meditation or in liminal space in the middle of the night or something like that, I'll be ask my soul, is this someone you want me to engage with? Is this somebody you want me to talk to? Or what do you want me to do with this? Or what have you? So if you can just start being in relationship with it and an active participant in it, more is going to come. Like movement begets movement. And the deeper you go in conversation, the more willing you are to be in conversation, the more comes.
Yeah, it's true. And I love that. And I know one thing that I started doing when I started connecting was like, hey, do you want me to take this way or this road to this place today? Right. And just like simple things like that too, because it really helps you. And then the day where I ignored it and I went the other way, there was like traffic for an hour backed up. I'm like, I should have listened to that. Right.
Yeah.
So it really truly always has your greatest good in mind. That's for sure.
And it's so good to start with those little things that you don't have any attachment to or any charge around, because sometimes it can be really hard to hear when we have fear or anxiety around something, or like it's a really big decision. So start with the like, should I go to this restaurant or this restaurant? Should I eat in tonight or should I go out tonight? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I love that. The charge.
Which shirt should I wear today? I literally do that every morning.
Totally.
Which one do you want me to wear?
Totally. I love that. I'm going to start doing that with my clothes. I never thought about that.
It's sometimes I'm like, really? Okay. All right.
That's so funny. It's been cold here. So I'm just like sweaters. It's cold, but I love that so much. Okay. So we've talked about the channel, easy little ways to practice. So I know, like you said, we should start practicing with little things, but say a big decision's coming up. Do you have any tips for how to like address the fear or whatever like emotions may be coming up that may be blocking us from tapping into that, because it can be so easy for the ego analytical to take over and to be really loud.
Yeah.
And then for us to feel like, okay, but I can't quite access that.
Yeah. There are a few things, a number of things, so many ways in, if you will. One of them is listen to the voice underneath these options. If there's like an option or several options in front of you, listen to the voice that's underneath when you feel into kind of each one of them. Like, where is that coming from? What's the source of that voice? Is it speaking with, shame or fear, or I should, or, does it come with constriction? Does it come with like any kind of self-judgment? Does it come with like, you can kind of start listening to the voices that you hear underneath. So that's one part. Another is kind of in a similar vein. They're often going to be, again, it's kind of this overly complex, not so linear thing full of paradox, right? Which is, you don't typically have, especially when it's a really big decision, you don't typically have like, I feel this one way about this option and this one way about another option. It's these cocktails, these multiple, like multi-thread, like many feelings kind of woven together for this option, and many feelings woven together for this option over here. And so it's a matter of listening to kind of like what's alongside. So if there's fear in this direction, what else is there? What other feelings are there? What else can you kind of pinpoint or identify, or what's walking with that fear? What's alongside it? And then what's alongside this one over here? And so it's a matter of kind of getting clearer and clearer about the really subtle things, the really subtle bits of information that we get all the time from our body, from our emotions, from our intuition, and listening to all of it. That's one of the ways, that's one of the indicators for me of like sacred masculine versus wounded masculine. Wounded masculine only listens to like one thing. Right. And sacred masculine is like, I'm going to listen to it all. And I'm going to find a way forward that's actually going to be in service of all of those things if I can. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like feeling into more of what feels in alignment versus going, doesn't matter what this feels like, I have to pick this.
Yeah. It's not ignoring any one part of ourselves. It's listening deeper to all parts of ourselves and seeing if we can find something that serves all of them, if we can.
I love that. And I feel like that could also relate to, again, the physical body, right? Symptoms, emotions, behaviors, like this goes across the board, right? Whether it's energetic, spiritual, physical, because I think that's something that we've been conditioned to with our health is like, oh, Western medicine is the only way. And if they don't, give you the green light about it or believe in it, it's not real. Right. And everything serves its purpose. However, again, when all these limiting beliefs are planted in us, like, oh yeah, after 30, you're going to gain weight and you're going to have horrible menopause symptoms and you're going to have, oh, you don't have any hormone issues. You're too young, or you don't fit this criteria. Like, it's just when people open up and go, wow, there's like all kinds of opportunities and all kinds of levels of support. I feel like that also kind of describes what you're just talking about.
Yeah. And it's like, again, the more we can kind of detach from or get unattached to linearity in this one way, it is so deeply in our service, because we are such complex little beings, and it's never going to be one exact template that works for everybody. And it's not even going to be one exact template that works for your whole life. And it's not going to be one exact template that works in every situation. It's like, can we show up new? Can we show up in beginner's mind in everything, in every situation, instead of trying to say, like, again, like the idea of like, what is a timeline? And like, looking, I want the definition of it. It's like, can you just like allow yourself to be in the present moment and see what wants to be here now, instead of worrying about what timeline you're on and if it's the right one and like all of that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Agreed. I love that. I love that so much. And it's kind of funny because maybe my next question is a bit like that, but I always like to ask this because everyone's take is beautiful. It kind of combines like timelines and energy and everything, but we're on this beautiful planet. Where do you see us going in in the, you know, as we're here and we evolve, like, what do you see unfolding collectively? And how do you think all of this that you're sharing with me, do you think, I feel like this is going to become like second nature, right? For human beings, as we remember who we are and we reconnect. But I just love hearing people's takes. So feel free to share whatever you like.
So good. So good. And such a beautiful, like my whole body just like, I don't know. I feel like I just anchored in even more when you asked that question, because it feels like so much less trying and so much less like focus on the external, whether that's trying to get something from there or trying to get to somewhere or whatever else it is. Like, it just feels really good on my nervous system as soon as I kind of let myself tap into that. So, okay. So I'm for some reason feeling called to share with you because there's no simple answers today.
That's okay.
Kind of foundational principles for the work that I do. I basically, I used to guide a course called Goddess, which was very much just kind of like I said, the kind of more traditional feminine energy, like remembrance of your feminine, healing out of the over masculinized patterns that we're in. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful course. You can still actually get it. It's a really beautiful place to start if it's kind of your first foray into feminine energy. And I used to guide it twice a year. And then at some point, and it was like the cornerstone of my work. And then one autumn, I couldn't feel her at all. And I was like, oh, what's happening? And because it's like, that was like my moneymaker. I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? But thankfully, because I do this work so much, I was like, okay, something else apparently wants to be here. And I'm going to listen deeper than I even normally do. And that's when Golden Goddess started coming through. And how I received Golden Goddess was over time. So it didn't drop in all at once, but over time was a series of grids. This gets very out there, but I love it. And I know it's going to make sense, but this is where I feel like we're going because this is why I do the work that I do. It's in essence showing me a series of right relationships. And so the 3 axes of the primary grid that I work with for Golden Goddess is right relationship between our inner masculine and our inner feminine, the right relationship between human and soul, human and higher, human and divine, and right relationship between, third axis being right relationship between self and other, internal, external, present and future, or present and past, because both of those are quote unquote external. They're not here anymore.
Right.
Or yet. And so it's those 3 axes kind of all working together. And the 4th dimension of it is time. So it's the practice of it over time. It's the embodiment of it. It's the immediacy of it, the devotion to it over time. And so that for me feels like, long story short, that feels like where we're going is right relationship with literally everything, with one another, with our own selves and our own bodies, with nature, with animals, with the higher realms and the divine, with source, with God, with whatever, with how we speak to one another, with how we relate to one another, with how we relate to time, with how we relate to money, with how we do business, with like all that. I'm like, I have chills all over right now.
So do I. I feel like I could cry. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. So that for me, I know no short order, but it's so much more easy. That's a weird way of saying that. Terrible English. So much easier when we just begin, when we start to get conscious of what those right relationships actually look like and just start taking the steps, the small steps, the baby steps, when we start to nurture and like allow ourselves to enter in again, kind of like babies, if you will, like beginner's mind, and just say like, I'm willing to look for the action and the word and the presence that embodies the most of that right relationship as I can, knowing that it's always going to be in process. So.
I love that so much. Thanks, that's so resonant. So many chills. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I totally feel that too. And I think that it's just such a beautiful journey, and we're all here for our own reasons and the collective, right? To help assist in getting us to that point. And I think you're starting to see so much more of that. And so many of us coming here, you know, with these gifts, right? And sharing what we are. It's just so beautiful and so unique to witness everybody and what they have to bring to the table, because it's so special. Honestly, like what you do and give to the world is so special and such a gift. And
thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Any little nuggets or, you know, last minute words today?
Well, one of the things that's coming to mind is, because I know I go straight out into the deep end, and I do tend to do that. But if anyone is feeling like kind of a tingle about this work and wondering if it's like all just that big esoteric out there-ness, it is, and it's not. They're like, we get very practical and we get very, you know, like all of the things to help you, because that's the point, right? If we're not embodying it, if we're not actually like doing the things here and carrying it out as humans here, that's part of that relationship between human and higher, is that if we're not actually, we can understand it all if we want to, but if we're not actually embodying it and taking action in service of it, then it's not really doing anything. And so, but what else, what do I want to leave the audience with? It feels very connected to kind of what you do, and maybe the intersection of our medicines, if you will, is if you haven't already, start listening to your body more deeply, especially the lower half of your body. So in my experience, kind of how I like to describe this, our over masculinized conditioning, this world that has conditioned us into like overthinking, overdoing, over like, you know, overexerting, draining ourselves of our life force, all of that, has us kind of squeezed like toothpaste tubes into the upper three chakras that we, you know, operating like in very much in our, like in our heads and in the doing and in the like, you know, understanding realms. And we've kind of forgotten about the lower. I consider our lower three chakras to be feminine, upper three to be masculine, and our heart to be the great connector. So we don't spend much time in our lower three. And so if you can take time, even just like loosen the muscles in your belly and start breathing way down here, and just start paying attention to the sensations that are happening in your body. And just like I said before, just start kind of being in dialogue with them. What do they want? What are they asking for? What might they be saying to you? What might that voice be saying? And that's such a powerful way to start both stepping a bit more into the feminine, but also listening more to the invisible realms within you.
I love that so much. That's so beautiful. And yeah, like I know sometimes I'll just feel called to like rub my womb or my lower abdomen, and it's just like, oh, there's obviously some love or nurturing or attention to go there, right? So I absolutely love that, and love the listening to the body. Couldn't agree more with you. So where can everybody find you if they want to check you out online, social media, your programs?
Yes, I am. My website is heather-allison.com, ALLISON. And Instagram is I am Heather Allison. I always forget what my Facebook is, but you'll have the link. I think it's I am Heather B. Allison, I think. Yeah, you can find, there's all kinds of things. I have a podcast as well called The Golden Path. So in the first 6 episodes are very like, teaching you, kind of taking you deeper into understanding this work and why it's important, why we're even looking at the archetypal energetics and all that stuff. So there's plenty of things to play with if you feel called to kind of just listen and dive into some free things. So anything.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There's stuff here for everybody at every level. So that's one of the things that I'll just share is there's Golden Goddess is an annual mystery school, the annual mystery school that I guide. The Spiral is the mini mystery school. And then the Sanctuary is my low cost monthly membership for women who just kind of want to taste.
I love that so much. And I'll make sure everything's in the show notes so people can click through easily and find you and follow you. Please follow her. She's amazing. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation today. And thank you so much for sharing your gifts and taking the time. And I feel like there's so many other things we could talk about. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2 at some point.
I would love that.
Yes.
I would love that. And thanks for playing in the mystery with me today.
Anytime.